I am Natalie, 27 years old, and until 6 weeks ago, I was just an ordinary kindergarten teacher living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment. My grandparents raised me more than my own parents ever did. They were wealthy but humble, teaching me that character matters more than cash. When they died in that terrible crash, I was shattered. Then came the lawyer meeting where I learned they had left me their entire $26 million estate. The family who barely visited them suddenly wanted everything. I refused. If you want to see money reveal true colors, stick around. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more stories about standing your ground when family shows their true colors. Growing up, my parents were always physically present, but emotionally absent. My father, Richard, worked 60-hour weeks climbing the corporate ladder, while my mother, Diane, spent her time networking with the right social circles. Family dinners were rare, and when they happened, my parents were usually distracted by work calls or social planning. They provided the basics, but warmth and guidance were in short supply. From the age of 5, I spent every weekend and entire summers with my grandparents, Elizabeth and Harold. Their modest 4-bedroom house became my true home. Despite having significant wealth, they lived simply. Their 3-acre property had a vegetable garden where Grandpa Harold taught me to grow tomatoes and zucchini. Grandma Elizabeth showed me how to bake cookies from scratch and sew buttons. They attended every school play and soccer game my parents missed. My grandparents built their fortune from nothing. They started a small logistics company in their garage in the 1970s with just one truck and a dream. By the time I was born, Alexander Logistics had become a regional powerhouse, with a fleet of 200 trucks and 5 warehouses across 3 states. Yet you would never know their net worth by looking at them. Grandpa drove the same pickup truck for 20 years. Grandma clipped coupons and bought clothes on sale. They always told me, "Money is just a tool, Natalie, not a measurement of your worth. Use it to build something meaningful, not to impress people who do not matter." This philosophy was precisely what created the rift with my father. As their only son, he grew up expecting to inherit everything and live lavishly. He resented their frugality, calling them stingy and old-fashioned. What he saw as deprivation, they saw as character building. They paid for his college education but expected him to work summer jobs. When he graduated, they helped him with a down payment on a modest starter home, not the luxury condo he wanted. The final break came when my father demanded a senior position at their company, despite having no relevant experience. My grandparents refused, saying he needed to earn it like everyone else. He stormed out, taking a corporate job instead, and their relationship was never the same. For me, they took a different approach. They paid for my education in full, allowing me to graduate debt-free, but they encouraged me to choose a career based on passion rather than profit. When I decided to become a kindergarten teacher, they were genuinely thrilled, even though my starting salary was barely above minimum wage. Throughout my adult life, I maintained a close relationship with my grandparents. We had standing Sunday dinners every week. I helped them navigate new technology, setting up their smartphones, and showing them how to video chat. They taught me their family recipes and told stories about their youth. During holidays, I always stayed with them rather than at my parents' house, which caused endless friction with my mother, who saw it as a personal rejection. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, about 20 minutes from my grandparents' home. It was small but cozy, filled with second-hand furniture and plants. My salary at Sunshine Elementary School was modest, but it covered my needs. I found joy in simple pleasures, like reading books from the library, hiking in the state park, and volunteering at the animal shelter. My grandparents respected my independent lifestyle, though they occasionally surprised me with practical gifts like new winter tires or a high-quality blender. 6 weeks ago, everything changed. I was grading papers on a Tuesday evening when I got the call from the police. My grandparents had been driving home from their favorite restaurant when a drunk driver ran a red light, hitting their car at full speed. They died instantly. The officer said they did not suffer, but that brought little comfort. The funeral was a blur. I remember my parents taking charge of the arrangements, arguing with the funeral director about costs. My brother Jason flew in from California, spending most of the time on his phone. Aunt Pam cried dramatically for photos but stopped the moment cameras were put away. Uncle Steve just stood awkwardly in corners, following Aunt Pam like a shadow. None of them had visited my grandparents in years, yet suddenly they were acting like the grieving family. I just felt numb. The two people who truly understood and supported me were gone forever. Their home, once warm and inviting now, stood empty. I could not bring myself to go inside after the funeral. Instead, I returned to my apartment, took bereavement leave from school, and tried to process my new reality. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received a call from Matthew Goldstein, my grandparents' attorney. He requested that I, along with my immediate family, come to his office for the reading of the will. Little did I know how that meeting would upend everything I thought I knew about my family. The morning of the will reading dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I arrived at Goldstein Legal 15 minutes early, dressed in a simple black dress, and carrying the umbrella my grandmother had insisted I keep in my car for emergencies. The office was located in a converted Victorian house downtown, its interior warm with wood paneling and leather chairs. Matthew Goldstein greeted me with a gentle handshake. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. My grandparents had mentioned him often as both their attorney and friend for over 30 years. "I am so sorry for your loss, Natalie," he said quietly. "Elizabeth and Harold were extraordinary people. I will miss our chess games and her lemon bars at our meetings." His genuine emotion made my eyes well up. "Thank you," I managed. "They spoke highly of you, too." Before we could continue, the glass door swung open, and my family arrived all at once. My father Richard entered first, checking his expensive watch impatiently. At 56, he looked like an older, harder version of my grandfather, but without the warmth. My mother Diane followed, her designer handbag, probably costing more than my monthly rent. My 25-year-old brother Jason swaggered in wearing sunglasses indoors, his idea of business attire being a wrinkled button-up shirt partially tucked into jeans. Behind them came Aunt Pam, my father's younger sister, already talking loudly on her phone about some perceived slight from her country club friends. Uncle Steve trailed behind, nodding politely to me, but quickly averting his eyes. They had been married for 20 years. But I had rarely heard him speak more than a few sentences at family gatherings. "Well, let's get this over with," my father announced without bothering with greetings. "Some of us have actual businesses to run." Matthew smiled thinly. "Of course, Richard. Please follow me to the conference room. We are all here now." The tension in the room was palpable as we settled around a large oak table. My father sat at one end as if claiming authority, while I chose a seat near Matthew's position at the head. The others arranged themselves according to their usual alliances, my mother next to my father Jason, next to her Aunt Pam, and Uncle Steve across from them. Before we begin, Matthew said, "I want to clarify that Elizabeth and Harold were of completely sound mind when they updated their will last year. They were thorough in their considerations and explicit in their wishes." My father snorted. "Just read it, Matt. We know how it goes. Dad built the business. I am his son. Standard inheritance procedure." Matthew ignored the interruption and opened a leather portfolio. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. "I, Harold Alexander, and I, Elizabeth Alexander, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this our last will and testament. The formal legal language continued for several minutes, with Matthew detailing revocations of previous wills and appointment of executors. My family shifted impatiently. Finally, he reached the section everyone was waiting for. We hereby bequeath our entire estate, including, but not limited to all cash assets, totaling approximately $8 million. Our investment portfolio valued at approximately $12 million. All real estate holdings, including our primary residence valued at $5 million, and our 25% ownership stake in Alexander Logistics, valued at approximately $1 million, to our beloved granddaughter, Natalie Grace Foster. The room went completely silent. I stopped breathing for a moment, certain I had misheard. Matthew continued, "We specifically and intentionally make no provisions for our son Richard Alexander, our daughter-in-law Diane Alexander, our grandson Jason Alexander, our daughter Pamela Davis, or our son-in-law Stephen Davis, as we have provided for them during our lifetime, and have made our reasons clear to our attorney." "Let me see that," my father shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped backward. He snatched the document from Matthew's hands, scanning it frantically. "This is ridiculous," my mother joined in. $26 million to a kindergarten teacher. She would not know the first thing about managing that kind of money. Jason slammed his hand on the table. "What about me? I am family too. I need startup capital for my business ventures." Aunt Pam turned to me, her face flushed with anger. "What did you do? How did you manipulate them into this?" I sat in shocked silence, unable to process what was happening. $26 million. My modest grandparents had accumulated that much, and they left it all to me. Matthew calmly retrieved the will from my father's grip. "If you will all please take your seats, there is more." Harold and Elizabeth recorded a video message to be played at this time. He pressed a button on a remote, and the large screen on the wall illuminated. My grandparents appeared sitting side by side on their living room sofa. My heart clenched at seeing them alive again, looking exactly as they had the last time I visited. Grandpa Harold spoke first. "If you are watching this, it means we have passed on. We want to explain our decisions directly, to prevent any misunderstandings." Grandma Elizabeth continued, "Richard, Pam, we love you as our children, but we have been deeply disappointed by the values you have embraced and passed to your own children, with the exception of Natalie." For decades, my grandparents explained they had watched my father and aunt prioritize material wealth over relationships, treating them as a resource to be tapped rather than as parents to be cherished. They detailed years of missed family events, requested loans never repaid, and dismissive attitudes toward their modest lifestyle choices. "The business we built," Grandpa said, "was never about amassing wealth for its own sake. It was about creating security for our family and opportunities for our employees. We built it through hard work, integrity, and treating people fairly." "Natalie is the only one who has demonstrated these values consistently," Grandma added. "She visits us not because she wants something, but because she genuinely cares. She has chosen a career helping children despite the low pay, because it fulfills her purpose." "We trust Natalie to be a good steward of what we have built," Grandpa continued. "She will honor our legacy and use these resources wisely, not squander them on status symbols or get rich quick schemes." The video continued for several more minutes, with my grandparents expressing their hopes for how the inheritance might be used to support education and community development areas they had always cared about but had limited time to address, while running their business. As the screen went dark, my father exploded. "This is absolute garbage. They were clearly senile. We will contest this will. No judge will uphold this insanity. Matthew remained perfectly calm. They anticipated that response, Richard. They underwent extensive cognitive testing before finalizing this will, with multiple independent doctors certifying their competence. Additionally, they documented years of behaviors that informed their decision. I must advise you that contesting will be extremely difficult, expensive, and unlikely to succeed. My mother turned to me, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Natalie, darling, you understand this is not right. Your grandparents were confused. This money belongs to the family, not just you. You will share it with us, won't you? I felt cornered, all eyes on me. I have to think about this, I stammered. I had no idea they would do this. Think about it, Jason scoffed. There is nothing to think about. That money should be divided equally. Or managed by someone with actual business experience, my father interjected, meaning himself. As the arguing intensified, Matthew gently touched my arm. You do not have to decide anything today, Natalie. Take time to process. My office will handle all immediate matters related to the estate. He handed me a thick envelope. This contains all the relevant documents, keys to their house, and contact information for their financial advisors. Call me any time with questions. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that, with threats of lawsuits and accusations flying. Matthew eventually asked everyone to leave, stating he had another appointment. As we filed out, my father grabbed my arm roughly. This discussion is not over, he hissed. Come to our house tonight at 6. We will sort this out as a family. His tone made it clear this was not a request. I nodded numbly, too overwhelmed to argue. As they departed in their separate luxury vehicles, I sat in my 10-year-old sedan in the parking lot, clutching the envelope and wondering how inheritance meant to be a blessing had so quickly become a curse. I spent the afternoon in a daze driving aimlessly around town before stopping at a quiet park to gather my thoughts. The envelope from Matthew sat unopened on my passenger seat. Part of me wanted to peek inside to understand exactly what my grandparents had entrusted to me. Another part was terrified of the responsibility it represented. At 5:45, I pulled into my parents' driveway, noting that everyone else had already arrived. Their 5,000-square-foot house loomed before me, all granite and glass, designed to impress rather than welcome. I took a deep breath, grabbed the envelope, and headed inside. They were waiting in the formal living room, a space rarely used, except for my mother's social gatherings. My father stood by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand. My mother perched on the edge of an uncomfortable-looking designer chair. Jason sprawled across the sofa, scrolling through his phone, while Aunt Pam paced nervously. Uncle Steve stood by the window, gazing out, as if wishing to be elsewhere. Finally, my father said when I entered, "Sit down, Natalie." I chose a chair near the door, suddenly aware I might need a quick exit. "Let us be reasonable about this," my father began, his business negotiation voice in full effect. "Your grandparents clearly were not thinking clearly. They meant for the family to benefit, not just you." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Sweetheart, managing wealth is complicated. Your father has the experience to handle this properly. You can still get a nice portion, perhaps enough for a down payment on a real house, instead of that apartment." The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl, but I remained silent. Emboldened by my lack of response, my father continued. "Here is what we propose. You sign over the estate to me as the financial head of the family. I will ensure everyone gets their fair share. You will receive 10%, which is more than generous considering your limited needs." 10%, I finally found my voice. That would still be over $2 million. Exactly, Jason jumped in. More than enough for a teacher. I need at least 5 million for my cryptocurrency exchange platform. It is going to be huge. I looked at him skeptically. Jason had bounced between get-rich-quick schemes for years, never holding a job longer than 3 months. His last venture, an app for rating public restrooms, had collapsed after burning through $50,000 of my parents' money. The house should go to us, Aunt Pam interjected. We have 3 children to consider. That neighborhood would give them access to better schools. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Aunt Pam had never once visited my grandparents in that house. Her children, my cousins, were strangers who sent obligatory birthday cards with my aunt's handwriting. As the evening progressed, their tactics evolved. When demands did not work, they switched to guilt. After all we have done for you, my mother said, her eyes dramatically moist. We gave you life a good home opportunities. This is how you repay family loyalty. I nearly choked on my water. Loyalty. When was the last time either of you called just to check on me? When did you ever attend one of my school performances? My father changed strategies again. We are not asking Natalie. We are telling you what will happen. Either you sign the transfer documents voluntarily, or we will contest the will. We will bring up every questionable interaction you had with your grandparents. How often did you visit them alone? What did you tell them about us when we were not there? It will get ugly. The threat hung in the air. I felt sick, but something inside me hardened. A memory surfaced of my grandfather teaching me to stand my ground during a playground dispute when I was 8. No one can take your dignity unless you give it away, Natalie, he had said. Know what is right and hold firm. Uncle Steve, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke. Maybe we should all calm down and give Natalie some time to think. This is a lot to process. My father rounded on him. Stay out of this, Steve. This is family business. I am family, he responded quietly, but immediately retreated when my father glared at him. As the clock ticked past 9, Jason started drafting transfer paperwork on his laptop. My mother called their personal attorney for advice on the wording. Aunt Pam scrolled through real estate listings for my grandparents' house, talking about which walls she would knock down first. They had already divided my inheritance, without my consent, mapping out how they would spend every dollar. Not once did anyone mention my grandparents' wishes or legacy. Not once did they ask what I thought should be done with the money. At 10:30, my father printed out the crude transfer document and slid it across the coffee table to me, along with a pen. Sign it, he demanded. Now. I picked up the paper and read it carefully. The language was broad, essentially signing away all my rights to anything my grandparents had left me. In exchange, I would receive a percentage to be determined later at my father's sole discretion. I put the paper down and took a deep breath. The room went silent. What did you just say? My father asked, his voice dangerously low. I said no. I will not sign this or anything like it. My grandparents trusted me with their legacy for a reason. I intend to honor that trust. My mother launched into a tirade about ingratitude. Jason called me names I will not repeat. Aunt Pam began sobbing dramatically about her children's future. Through it all, I sat still, the word no becoming a shield around me. Finally, my father slammed his glass down so hard it cracked. That is enough, he roared. I always told Dad you were not to be trusted. You manipulated them, just like you are trying to manipulate us now with this innocent act. He stalked toward me, pointing his finger inches from my face. You have a choice to make right now, Natalie. Either you sign that paper and remain part of this family, or you take your precious inheritance and consider yourself disowned. You cannot have both. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I looked around at the faces of my family members, searching for any sign of love or understanding. I found none. In that moment, I realized a painful truth: they had never really seen me as family. I was just a means to an end, a potential source of money, nothing more. I am not signing, I said firmly, standing up. I am sorry you feel this way, but I have to respect what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. Then get out of my house, my father snarled. Pack your things and leave tonight. You are no longer welcome here. I live in my own apartment, I reminded him. I have for years. He laughed coldly. The apartment we co-signed for, because your teacher's salary could not qualify for the lease. Check your agreement, Natalie. We own that building through one of our investment companies. Consider your lease terminated. My stomach dropped. He was right. When I could not qualify for the apartment on my own, they had offered to help. I never realized they actually owned the building through a shell company. You have 30 minutes to pack essential items, my mother said, checking her watch. The locks will be changed tomorrow. I stood frozen in shock. They were actually kicking me out, making me homeless over money they had never earned. The clock is ticking, Jason smirked. Better hurry, sis. Those $26 million will not keep you warm tonight. 30 minutes is not long to pack up your life. I moved on autopilot, grabbing clothes, toiletries, important documents, and a few sentimental items. My mind kept spinning with disbelief. How could they do this? How could money turn my family into complete strangers? My father stood in the doorway of my bedroom, arms crossed, watching me like a guard, ensuring a prisoner did not steal anything during transfer. My mother stayed downstairs, already on the phone with a real estate agent about selling my grandparents' house, her voice carrying up the stairs. You were never really part of this family anyway, my father said coldly, as I stuffed clothes into a duffel bag. Your mother and I were going to divorce before she got pregnant with you. You were the obligation that kept us together. The casual cruelty of his revelations staggered me. I had always sensed I was unwanted, but having it confirmed so bluntly was another matter entirely. We have wasted enough time and money on you, my mother added, appearing in the doorway. Your private school tuition, braces, summer camps, all those dance lessons you were terrible at. Consider this the end of our investment. Investment. Not love or care, but investment, as if I were a stock that had performed poorly. Jason appeared next, leaning against the wall with a smug expression. You will regret this when you have nothing, and no one, he said. That money will run out faster than you think. And then what? You will come crawling back, and we will remember how you chose cash over family.